Imagine a world where the line between entertainment and exploitation blurred so completely that human beings were displayed like exotic animals, their deformities a source of morbid fascination. A world where the laughter of children mingled with the whispers of horror, and the spotlight, rather than illuminating joy, often cast long, dark shadows over lives defined by their difference. What if I told you this wasn't some dystopian nightmare, but the wildly popular, darkly glamorous reality of the Victorian circus? Because for over a century, these traveling spectacles offered a glimpse into an existence many found both terrifying and utterly irresistible, a dark mirror reflecting society's deepest anxieties and its insatiable hunger for the extraordinary and the grotesque. To truly understand the dark heart of the Victorian circus, we need to rewind to an era steeped in dramatic social change and burgeoning industrialism. The 19th century was a time of immense scientific discovery, yet also profound superstition. Public executions were still a tourist attraction, and the lower classes sought escapism and spectacle wherever they could find it. The traditional circus, with its acrobats, clowns, and trained animals, had long been a staple, but a darker, more sensational element began to creep in. This was the age of the curiosity cabinet, where objects considered strange or exotic were collected and displayed for public viewing. It was a natural, albeit chilling, progression to extend this fascination to human beings who deviated from the norm. The advent of faster transportation, like railways, allowed these grand spectacles to crisscross continents, bringing their unsettling allure to an ever wider audience. Showmen like the legendary P.T. Barnum weren't just entertainers, they were master propagandists, crafting narratives, often entirely fabricated, that transformed real people into mythical figures, capitalizing on the public's hunger for wonder and perhaps a perverse sense of superiority. This wasn't merely about entertainment. It was about defining normalcy by showcasing its opposite, a public examination of the other that drew gasps and whispers and, crucially, filled coffers. But things took a darker turn as the freak show, as it unapologetically called itself, became the undeniable star attraction. These were the so-called human curiosities, individuals with genetic conditions, unusual physical attributes, or extraordinary talents. We're talking about the bearded lady, the ossified man, Jojo the dog-faced boy, and the elephant man, Joseph Merrick, whose heartbreaking story has resonated through history. These performers were often paraded before gaping crowds, sometimes in tents dimly lit by gaslight, sometimes on grand stages under the searing heat of the spotlight. Their posters, plastered across towns, promised unparalleled wonders, depicting them often as monstrous or otherworldly, exaggerating their conditions to lure in the curious. Take, for instance, Chang and Eng Bunker, the original Siamese twins, who achieved international fame and even married sisters, fathering many children. Their existence challenged conventional understanding of identity and anatomy, making them both celebrated figures and objects of scientific scrutiny. Then there was General Tom Thumb, a diminutive man named Charles Stratton, discovered by Barnum, who became an international celebrity performing for royalty across Europe. He was a master showman, charming and witty, turning his size into a theatrical advantage. Some, like Tom Thumb, found a degree of agency and even wealth within this system, using their unique circumstances to achieve a life far beyond what they might have otherwise known in an era with limited opportunities for people with disabilities. Yet, for every Tom Thumb, there were countless others who were exploited, their lives reduced to a spectacle. Their living conditions could be deplorable, wages meager, and their individual identities often erased, replaced by the carnival persona engineered by their managers. The narratives spun around them were a potent mix of fact and fiction. Jojo, the dog-faced boy, Fedor Jeftichu, suffered from hypertrichosis, a condition causing excessive hair growth. Barnum marketed him as a wild savage captured in the Russian wilderness, barking and growling for the audience. The line between reality and elaborate theatrical trickery was constantly blurred, further deepening the mystery surrounding these individuals and fueling public fascination. Doctors would often attend these shows, not just for entertainment, but for medical observation, sometimes even participating in public dissections or examinations, further stripping these individuals of their dignity. The circus became a perverse laboratory, a stage for scientific curiosity intersecting with morbid entertainment, revealing as much about contemporary societal attitudes towards disability and difference as it did about the individuals on display. What they discovered next, or rather, what the public chose to ignore, was the harrowing reality behind the grease paint and sensational headlines. Many of these performers, despite their fame, lived lives of profound isolation and sometimes cruelty. They were often viewed as less than human, subjected to ridicule and objectification, their bodies dissected by the public gaze. The freak was a commodity, a novelty to be consumed and discarded. The showmen who paraded them weren't primarily concerned with their well-being, but with maximizing profits. Stories abound of performers being ill-fed, housed in cramped quarters unfit for humans, denied proper medical care, and prevented from forming relationships outside the protective, yet ultimately exploitative, bubble of the circus. For some, the circus offered a refuge, a community of others deemed different, where they found acceptance and a livelihood, however precarious. But for many more, it was a gilded cage, a means of survival that came at the steep cost of autonomy and dignity. The very act of being gawked at by hundreds, sometimes thousands, could be psychologically devastating. The constant pressure to perform, to embody the exaggerated persona created for them, masked the quiet desperation that often lay beneath. The public, in their pursuit of novelty, rarely paused to consider the human cost. They paid their 10 cents, gasped, whispered, and moved on, leaving behind a profound question. Who were the real monsters in this macabre stage production? To this day, the legacy of the Victorian circus and its freak shows forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our past and our present. The curtain began to fall on these exhibitions in the early 20th century as public sensibilities shifted and medical understanding of conditions improved, slowly eroding the mystique of the unexplained. New laws passed in many places made the public display of people with disabilities illegal or highly restricted. The monstrous was gradually understood as simply different, and the ethical implications of such displays became increasingly undeniable. However, the fascination with the extraordinary and the tendency to other those who do not fit societal norms hasn't vanished entirely. It has simply shape-shifted, migrating from the circus tent to reality television, online platforms, and the endless pursuit of viral content. The Victorian circus was a mirror held up to society, reflecting our base desires, our fears of the unknown, and our capacity for both profound cruelty and a fleeting, superficial wonder. It serves as a stark, unsettling reminder that sometimes the greatest monsters are not found under the spotlight, but in the shadows of our own collective conscience. We may never fully escape the allure of the extraordinary, but perhaps we can learn to appreciate it with a more compassionate, understanding gaze. If you want to delve deeper into the strange and unsettling corners of human history, the next video explores the forgotten medical experiments that shocked a nation. Prepare yourself, because some truths are stranger and far darker than any fiction.